Well, Christian, you Chief Executive of Red Bull Advanced Technologies, so presumably you had to sign off the idea of a skate park suspended from a hot air balloon and a guy riding a BMX on it. Did you sign it off straight away?
No, we just made the bid. So the thought of riding a BMX bike suspended from a hot air balloon 2,000 feet in the air that's only Red Bull could come up with an idea like that. All we could do was provide the technology of making a bowl that was light enough and strong enough using Formula One composite technologies to enable the stunt to happen. But I certainly wasn't involved in the idea.
What's interesting is you're talking about the sidebar projects. Some of them have involved Adrian Newey. And it's kept him motivated, maybe in years where the F1 regulations haven't been as inspiring for him. Obviously, you're back at the top of the game now. I am noticing one or two are saying, well, how long is he going to continue with Red Bull? Are you quite confident he will continue with them? And are some of these ongoing projects, like the RB17, something that does keep him motivated?
Well, look, I mean, Red Bull Advanced Technology has had such varied projects. And the first one was the Valkyrie, which was Adrian's ambition to produce a road-going car, which we did with Aston Martin, with a partnership we had at the time, and that's gone on to other projects, and of course the RB17 that we announced last year. But Adrian, his heart is still very much in Formula One, and his commitment to the team is it's not something. We don't talk about contracts or longevity of contracts, but he'll be here for many years to come, and he's such an important part of our team. And popular part of our team. It's great to have him, with us for the long term, but also to be involved in projects, like some of the things that we're now getting involved in.
Yeah. Do you raise a bit of a smile when you hear some of these rumours about him still?
Well, there's always going to be rumours in this paddock, and that's Formula One.
Okay, fair enough. You're in a great spot at the moment. But we are in this little hiatus period. I'm noticing one or two of your peers saying it's not such a bad thing. We've got this break in F1 in what is a long season. Do you think maybe clusters of races with extended breaks, does it help? I mean, you have a duty of care to your factory workers and those on the road. Do you think it's a sensible thing to break the year up like this?
Well, you think it's a break because we're not racing, but the factory is actually running at white hot temperature at the moment with obviously updates, and of course particularly on the engine side of the business, it's incredibly busy. But I think that obviously with the cancellation of the Chinese Grand Prix, we have got that gap. Going to Australia for one weekend for 3 days is a long way to go, and a lot of jet lag to deal with for that period of time. And then of course we've got 5 races in 6 weeks when we get back after the summer break. So but of course it's very hard to put a calendar together that satisfies everyone, each of the countries that we visit, the holidays, the festivals that are happening, etc., etc. So, for the promoters, understandably, that's something very, very hard to cram in all these amazing events.
Yeah. And the next one we go to is Baku, and you've had some words about the wisdom of having the first sprint event of the year at that venue. Yeah. I suppose my question would be: is it riskier suspending a skate park from a balloon than it is having a sprint weekend in Baku?
Far less risk in the balloon. Look, Azerbaijan street race, one of the most unforgiving tracks on the calendar, and it's the first place we have a sprint race. So for the teams, it's a nightmare. But for the viewers and for the fans of Formula One, I think it's going to be an amazing spectacle. And I think there's some new regulations that are coming through for the sprint race that I think are going to make it even better. Look, I think it's going to be an incredible spectacle, but when you're under a budget cap, when you're limited on spares, and you've got a couple of races around one of the most unforgiving circuits in the world, for any team principal or team competing in the sport, it's tough.
Yeah, so we're looking at a standalone sprint. I think that's what I'm hearing anyway, with regard to that on Saturday with the sprint qualifying and then that happening. One or two are questioning, do we need to mess around with the sprint format? Do you think that's better? I mean, because qualifying then sets the grid for the race and that's more traditional? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, personally, I think there's two things. I think that the sprint concept, I think, is a good concept, and I think that it adds another element to the weekend. But I think there's no incentive for the driver to take a risk on the Saturday, because if you do, then that compromises your grid position on the Sunday. So decoupling those two races, I think, is actually a positive thing. I think you'll see the drivers pushing harder on a Saturday and having a qualifying that is bespoke to the Saturday race and a qualifying that is bespoke to the Grand Prix. I think is actually the right way to go. And I think there'll still be plenty of jeopardy. I think you'll get the drivers pushing harder. But if you have an off in the sprint race, it doesn't completely ruin your chances in the Grand Prix itself. And I think that, the format that we had, where on a Saturday morning, it was a bit of a nothingy session that teams would just go out and burn engine mileage. You can't work on the car. You can't change the setup on the car. Now, to have a bespoke qualifying and a sprint race on a Saturday, and then you're qualifying on a Friday, dictating your Grand Prix position for the Sunday, I think will create a way better spectacle for TV viewers, for fans attending Grand Prix, and I think is a logical evolution for the sprint race.
Yeah. I mean, Max has spoken out about his concerns about having an increasing number of these intense weekends over the course of the year. He is a traditionalist. Yep. I think we can say that. Maybe he doesn't support the change so much. He's been at this top level, at the white heat of competitions from the age of 17, and rightly so. I mean, he was a breath of fresh air. Yep. when he came in. Do you have concerns that, I could use the term burnout, he's still a young guy, but there will come a point in his 20s maybe where the sport might have taken too much out of him?
I think that, look, Max is his own man, and he's very, very strong in his opinions and on his outlook on what he wants to do in his life, and I don't see him being a Fernando Alonso and still racing at 41 or 42 years of age, or maybe not in Formula One, but what his love and passion is racing. And if he's not racing on track at the moment, he's racing in the virtual world. He's driving GT cars for fun, and his passion is just driving and racing. And while that burns within him, he's gonna keep going. But how long that burns for, I don't think anybody can individually. That's each individual's own journey. It's their own. They've got to find that out for themselves.
If he says he's concerned, you've got to take that on board as his boss. Take it seriously. That he's worried about the amount of energy being dissipated in these long, exhausting years.
Well, look, I mean, 23 races is a brutal calendar, but and it's tough. It's tough for the drivers. It's tougher for the mechanics. That are travelling at the beginning of a week and returning, on a Monday after an event. So it is a brutal calendar, and that ultimately it does take its toll at some point.
Okay. Well, listen, just to finish off on this year, great start you've made. I thought it appropriate to hear Gunther Steiner say it would be wrong to try and regulate against Red Bull to rein them back in, because where's the integrity of competition if we don't reward excellence? And your team has produced that this year. Also got Fred Vasseur saying, ooh, Red Bull's penalty was too light for that cost cap breach. Did you smile at that? Does that reflect maybe where Ferrari are right now, rather more than I suppose, the kind of penalty you were handed?
I think it's a little like earlier we were talking about, everybody's got an opinion, and I think that everybody's free to have an opinion. And the team have done a great job over the winter on limited wind tunnel time that we've had to develop this car. And of course that will have an impact later into the year and on next year. So on a snapshot of 3 races, I think it's still hugely premature in this season. There's an awful lot of racing still to go. There's a lot of things that can change. We're hearing of big updates coming for both Ferrari and for Mercedes when we get back to Europe. So, we're certainly not taking anything for granted. We're just focused on ourselves, doing the best job we can within the constraints that we have.